All right. This is a new computer. I've never used it before. So this is the microphone and the camera is all new.
High tech.
Yeah, I know. Finally breaking the near 40-year-old into it here.
That's cool, man. That's
I
cool.
know. How you been?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Mm, living the dream. I'm great. I'm great. I cannot complain.
So who are you?
Okay. Um, I am. That's an interesting question because I've been trying to figure that out.
Right, right.
30, 36-year-old privileged white male, recovering alcoholic, almost 8 years. I'm a comedian, cook, artist. I like to call myself an artist in the broad spectrum of just the way that I view life. You know, kind of that line from The Departed when he's talking and he says, Lennon said, "Give me a tuba and I'll get you something out of it." An artist can just. So I like, the writing, the drawing, the painting, the creating comedy. I'm just. I'm single. I've got a dog. I live in a garage apartment, which is kind of that typical studio artist lifestyle. I paint in my free time, which actually I started doing because I got sober and needed to fill, the drinking time. Completely fell in love with it. I got back to your roots is when you're drawing on your notebooks and fell in love with it. And I saw an artist and I said, I can do that. And next thing you know, 3 years later, I've got an Etsy shop, an online store. I'm selling on Instagram and watching Gary Vee videos, to try to inspire myself and turn it into something, so that's where I'm at now. I work in kind of that typical 9 to 5, and then I paint and create in the free time. The hours that I'm not at work, but I'm constantly moving and constantly doing something.
Love it. I love it. 36.
Yeah, just turned 36 in September.
That's awesome. Happy birthday, bro.
Thank you,
So we've
thank
got
you.
so much to talk about. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Yes,
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for making the time to do this with me. Thank you for
my pleasure.
so I'll just say a little bit too is for those of you who don't know, Mike and I know each other from back in the day, probably early 2000s, late 19, yeah,
Mm,
early 2000s. And
yeah,
we did stand up comedy together, if you want to call it that. And we got on
yeah.
stage and we said stuff and we got a reaction. And more recently, I have seen Mike posting all of this artwork, and I've known a little bit about him along the way because I know that you got sober. I remember you sharing that with me, and I'd love to talk about that too, both of our experience with that. I'm also in long-term recovery. I ask you, so you said you're still doing comedy,
Mm-hmm.
so you haven't
Not
left
as often.
comedy.
I think as a comedian, we ever really leave it,
Yeah,
especially in today's day and age where the world needs to laugh. In just every political spectrum and every societal spectrum, everybody's in pain, everybody's hurting. And, even us included, artists, some of the most, especially with the depression and the suicide and our mental, defects. So I always try to keep myself up or the people around me. And then why am I not doing this on a broader spectrum? And unfortunately, you're 9 to 5. Sometimes you can't get to a comedy club or you can't drive an hour for an open mic. And I said, well, with technology, let's break the rules. Why does it have to be, well, this is the way it's always been done? Well, that's great. If we stayed that way, we wouldn't be in a car. We'd be riding our horse to work. Let's figure it out. So I have looked into starting my own YouTube channel. What I want to do is take a character that I made, Goat Slayer, and have him do a presents so that, I may not be going to the comedy clubs, but I have that need and that want to make people laugh. So what I'm going to do is going to be a little variety show, just small little skits just to make people laugh. I love going to the comedy club and just showing up and just doing 4 or 5 minutes with no material, just joking with people in the crowd. You take time off because, as an artist, you hit that rut or writer's block, or a comedian, you hit a depression, or I just don't want to be around people. But you don't leave it for too long. When I got sober, I didn't want to be around that lifestyle for a little while and being in the bars. And I said, well, I'm 3 months without comedy. I'm doing okay. And then you get down to that comedy club and you feel the energy and you feel the love and you feel it's one of the few places nowadays where especially in today's society where nothing else matters. Doesn't matter. We're all there for one purpose, to forget our problems and laugh. And you can't escape that. So every time I say, well, I'm going to take some time off from the comedy club, I find myself writing more and more and more. So, I never really leave it. I just take hiatuses.
Well, that's really inspiring to me too, because that's been my big thing is I stopped doing comedy for a while. Like you said, you can't really get away from it. I've tried to break up with this broad a million times, right?
Yeah, there's
but
no way.
but the thing is that I had really crafted a body of material, and then it didn't, that was solid, that was really, uh, it was really doing a great job wherever I brought it. And I got
Hmm.
so invested in that material that I was afraid to do off the cuff because I didn't want to risk,
Hmm.
not using the good stuff. Well, what happened is I grew out of the good stuff. I was telling stories on stage that I didn't relate to anymore. I was like, I've grown past this. I've moved past this. As an artist, it was killing me, right? And so I did step away. But something that you just said is really, I think I'd like to hear more about it, and that is, we're all there for the same purpose. We're all there for the
Hmm.
same purpose, is to get away from what's going on outside of that room. I respect anybody
Hmm.
who's getting on stage and doing it. And I know personally that it's a journey, right? We go through a journey of growing up
Yeah.
almost. And so I don't
Yep.
want to take away from that, but I do want to create environments that are getaways. You don't want to sit in there and it's not funny. What's happening right now isn't funny.
And with some of the shock humor, and I did it when I first started.
Yeah.
It's low hanging fruit, and
Right.
like you said, you get away from it. And
Right.
now, instead of pulling people down to make that easy laugh, we're learning and we're studying to. It's a tougher joke, and it takes longer to write, but it's a better joke when you bring people up. And it's a process, like you said, and there's no getting away from it. Once it's in you, you're not leaving it. And especially in today's day and age,
Right
there's
on,
no
brother.
way you can sit have a cup of coffee watching the news and in your critical mind go, there's no way I shouldn't be putting this out there. Everybody feels, and when you go to the comedy club, I don't, we're all different, Everyone, I always looked at people like Christmas trees. Okay. At the heart of us, there's a trunk and branches. Okay. That's every one of us. That's our circulatory system, our hearts, our bodies. There's white trees, there's green trees, there's different shades of green trees, there's different shades of white trees, there's tall white, every type, okay? Then you get to do we have tinsel or do we have colored lights? Do we have what kind of ornaments? That's just all flair. That's all crap. We are Christmas trees without the decoration. And when we walk into that place, I look at the crowd as just blank Christmas trees. Now I see the bachelorette party with the tinsel and the flare and the blinking lights, but you're there celebrating, just like the family over here is celebrating something. Everybody should be there happy, and even if it's something that you don't want to laugh about, you should feel comfortable laughing about it. You should never. I cringe now when I watch, when you're younger and you're drinking, you're like, oh, a heckler, there's going to be a fight. I cringe now. I hate it because you had that flow and now you have this. Get them back here, and now everybody's happy. I cringe. I go, oh my God, get me up on stage. Let's just smooth it all over, And that's why, like when you said you were producing the shows, you just want to get people in there. They're going to have a nice, smooth flow. You don't have to get up as a host and apologize. Like, what did we just see? Or an open micer trying something out new, and it's
Right.
going to, you know,
Bro,
I could just blab
you just
all
took
day.
humanity and turned us into a Christmas tree. I love that. I love that
You
metaphor.
got to break it down and make it easy.
Yeah,
You got to make
I
it
love
easy.
that. So, what drove you to seek sobriety? How did that happen?
I had gotten my first DUI at 21 in Chicago. Didn't take it seriously enough. Figured, hey, it was just a mistake. Kept drinking. It got worse and worse and worse. I got my second DUI while I was dating. I had a serious relationship, and she had a 5-year-old daughter. We had been talking about starting a family, and I sat there in handcuffs and went, I'm talking about being an adult with my girlfriend, and I'm sitting in a childish position right now, handcuffed, because I don't know how to grow up. And I asked myself, I said, Michael, do you want to tell your son you can't take him to Little League because you don't have a license? I don't even have a son, but I didn't want to be that dad, And I said, I've got to do something. I've got to, if I don't quit now, the third strike, myself or somebody else is going to be dead. It's not going to be a DUI where you get handcuffed, you go to the police station, you fill your paperwork and go home. The third time, somebody, it's done. And I said, I can't do that. I can't kill myself or somebody else. I don't want to live this way anymore. And you have to ask yourself, do I want to? And you go, I want to quit. But do you really want to quit? And I sat there and I asked myself, I said, do I really want to quit? Do I really? And I never want to sit in this position again next to a police officer. I never want to sit in the back of a cop car again. And I said, I've got to quit. I've got to grow up. Now is the time. And ironically enough, 10 days before, it was Valentine's Day, and I had been out with my girlfriend, and she had asked me, are you going to quit drinking? And I said, why? Is it a problem? Is it in our relationship to you? And she said, no, but you mentioned your father would quit, a couple months ago, and that you saw yourself eventually quitting. And I said, Lucia, I just need a kick in the ass. 10 days later, I got arrested. And I said, well, there's the kick in the ass. And I went home. She picked me up. I drank a 22 of Bud Light on my bed as I cried my eyes out. And I made plans the next day to get sober. I called my parents. I told them what happened. We all cried. And I went to an AA meeting that night. And I sat in a room of 80 people at a church. And I listened to their pain and their problems. And I immediately, with the comedian mind, I wanted to go over to these people and, what's your problem? I want to help you. I want to make you laugh. I want to make you happy. I want to take you away from this. I wanted to be that portable comedy club. That's not why you're in AA. That's not why you go to these meetings. You're here to help yourself. And it's a selfish thing, but I had to do it. And I said, I know AA works. I know these things work, but maybe it just doesn't work for me. I said, I'm going to be distracted here. So I came home and I said, technology. If I can't get on the road, if I can't do these things, I'm going to bring them to me. So what did I do? Why am I like this, Google? Why is an addict like this? What makes me want to? And I read and I read and I studied. I spent 3 months going to work and coming home immediately and locking myself in my room. And I would just, why am I like this? How do I get better? I became my own psychologist. And I just tried to figure out what was wrong with me. And after a while, I started liking, after you go through the DTs and everything, life starts to fill itself in. The tree branches start to hang the way they're supposed to normally, and instead of forcing things, I got sober and things started to fall into place. Me as the Christmas tree, I started to glow naturally. And I had friends and they would go, how long are you going to stay sober? And I said, as long as I feel good. And I told myself a year later, I said, I'll start drinking when I find a reason that's worth it. Like when it can give me something. 8 years later, I'm still not drinking because it hasn't given me anything but a hard time, 2 DUIs, a lot of apologies. I wake up every day feeling great. I want to drink sometimes, it comes up, but I realize, look, if I've gotten through this hard time, or if I've gotten through my best friend dying, which was the worst thing that happened to me during my sobriety, if I got through that without wanting to drink, I think a bad day at work I don't need to go drink a 12-pack for it. So you just find other ways to deal with your issues. You don't get drunk and disappear into a bottle of liquor and hide from your problems. You deal with them. And then you feel better and you don't need to drink. So I got to the point where I said, Michael, if you don't get sober, you're going to die or you're going to kill somebody else. And I finally made that mature decision, like we all do. Today's the day. And you take it one day at a time. And here I am. And I couldn't be happier. I love it.
Well, it's nothing short of a miracle, in my opinion, when somebody. So do you consider yourself an alcoholic?
Yes. Oh God, yeah.
Okay, so I didn't want to give you a name you didn't own or you didn't think of. So I wanted to ask before I said it.
Through and through, I will be till I die. I'm just a recovering alcoholic now. The only thing that separates me is that one drink.
Yeah, for me, I think it's always a miracle when an alcoholic is able to put it down. because for a lot of us, the willpower isn't enough. So it's amazing
Mm,
to me. And I know, having been on stage with you, and I was newly sober when I met you, like within the year or two.
mhm.
So I don't
Yeah.
think that you saw me drinking, which is a good thing.
No.
um,
Yeah.
but
And
I
I'm
also,
sorry you saw me, but
yeah. Well, I understand not wanting to be in that environment in early sobriety, and I understand the way that a lot of us drink, and I also understand that it's none of my business to tell somebody else about their drinking. I just had to do what I was doing, and
mhm,
like you said, it's selfish. I mean, I had to do it for me, and I had to never mind what other people thought about it, because I really came to an end in my experience of myself, where I was just like, I might live until I'm 95 years old. I might be that skinny little red nosed, veiny cheeked woman who cannot not drink a bottle of Chablis today. And I don't want to live that long like this.
no, me neither.
So whether it killed me 6 feet under, or whether it killed me spiritually and with a desire to live and to have relationships and be a healthy tree, if you'll forgive me for jumping
Yeah.
on your metaphor,
No, no,
uh,
no, no.
it was a decision that I feel like I was lucky to have been able to make. Um,
Mhm. Oh, me too.
so you said that painting was sort of a replacement for your drinking.
Mhm.
Um, One of the questions that I was going to ask you before we started was, having met you on stage and with all of the audience and the immediate feedback, how does one go from that to painting? And what was that journey like for you?
I, I spent a lot of time just sitting on my computer and reading and learning. And when you're not drinking, you come home from work and you go, well, what am I doing from 10 until 2 in the morning? And you go, well, I'm usually always out at the bar, or until 4 in the morning. And
Right.
I said, well, I've got to find something else to do. And I didn't have any like hobbies at that point. And I said, well, I just happened to come across one of the New York street painters with the spray paint. And they do the galaxies and the planets. And I watched somebody do it, and I said, I got some old spray paint. Let me try it. And I tried it, and I could do it. And I said, but I could do it better than that guy. And this is that ego, I could do it better than that guy. And I went and bought a couple cans of spray paint, and I started to spray paint the planets. And then I started looking up. I remember Keith Haring from an art video in elementary school. And I just loved how he'd get off a train and the subway, and he'd see an empty space with chalk and just go fill it in. Hey, my art here, whatever how simple it is, these cave drawings look better than this blank space. And I loved it. And I started just doing more research, and I said, I have a ton of money that I'm not spending on alcohol and other people's drinks and nights of regret. So I started investing in some art supplies, and I started saying, I want to do fun things. I want to paint. I want to draw like I did when I was a kid that I didn't follow because I thought I was an athlete. Well, I'm 36 with a bad back. I'm not out playing softball every weekend. I can paint. So I bought materials and I started painting, and the process of just learning. And that comedian artist, I need validation. I would put it on the internet. And hey guys, this is what I've been doing sober. This is what I'm doing. And I'd get, hey, that's really good. Or I'd get, your 4-year-old nephew did a great job. And I didn't, when you get sober and you feel comfortable, your ego is gone. You're not afraid of failure. You almost welcome failure. Oh, okay, this painting didn't come out the right way. Well, there's only happy little mistakes. We'll go over it. It's a longer process to get any type of validation or feedback. But where I think the difference between the stand up and the art is, I'm always doing the art no matter what for myself. I'm in my apartment 5 hours a day painting, and you may not see any of that. And I may not make any money off of that, or I may not ever show anybody that canvas or that drawing, but it was something that I was doing. And maybe it's not for other people to see, it's for me. Kind of like how every comedian does one joke every once in a while, and another comedian will go, that joke sucked. And the comedian goes, that one was for me. That one made me laugh. That was my comedy, you can stand there and people will come up to you after the show. That was great. We'll buy you a drink. We'll shake your hand. And it's great. But I think the feeling of going into somebody's house and seeing your art on their wall is very similar to somebody saying 2 years after hearing one of your jokes, I thought of you when I went up an escalator. I always think of Mitch Hedberg when I go up escalators. So when somebody, it may not be the immediate gratification of somebody, but it's definitely the same in the long run. Where comedy, you're on stage, you say something, people laugh, it's immediate. Art, you may not see happiness. You're not going to look at a painting or a sculpture and visual, it's all mental. But having it in your house, or just the intro, oh my god, I enjoy what you're doing, that makes you feel good. But I think with painting, it's more for you more than for other people. Where I think comedy stand up is almost 50-50. This is for me, this is for the audience. I think art is almost more for the artist, than the crowd. I think we need to get it out on that. We need to get our issues out on that canvas, and whether or not anybody sees it, it doesn't matter. But I got those demons out. So even if a joke doesn't go over, I got it out.
I almost feel like you processed that right now as we're talking.
Yeah.
Which was kind of neat to see. It was sort of selfishly, it was interesting to watch. Very cool. Tell me more about welcoming failure. Now that you're sober, you almost welcome failure. Tell me what you mean by that.
I almost love failure, to be honest with you. I don't love failing because it's like, oh, I put all this work into something and I failed. But when you fail, you're making progress. In the past, if a joke didn't go over on stage and I was drinking, I was heartbroken. Oh my God, I spent all day or 2 weeks on this joke and it didn't go over, and it broke you in half. You didn't see, well, there's opportunity here. You now know what doesn't work about it. So throw it away. And I thought I knew what was working in my life until I got that DUI. That was failure. That was huge failure. But because of that, I was able to make my life better. I was seeing a girl recently, and we talked about me being bullied as a child, in school. And she said, I'm sorry. And I said, I'm not. And she said, why not? And I said, do you like who I am? And she said, yeah. And I said, I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't have the bullying. So I'm happy I had it because I processed it. And that's not failure, but all of my failures teach me to get better. I do a joke that doesn't work. Okay, what didn't work about it? Let's look at it and fix it. I do a painting. Oh, I didn't like where the color went. I'll fix it. If you don't fail, you're never going to want to get better. If everything you put out is good, where's the room for improvement? If every joke that you put out gets a laugh, then you're not going to sit there and go, well, I'm going to go home and work for a bigger laugh, or I'm not going to try to get better. If everything that you did was successful and it worked, it's just going to be the same. It's going to be a 5. On a scale of 1 to 10, everything that's going to work, it's going to be a 5. Well, on my scale, I might have 5 2s in a row, and oh, darn. But it pushes me to get that 110, and that 110 makes up for the 5 losses. What was it, Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Edison? They failed 10,000 times, but they succeeded 100. I want you to name one of their failures. You can't, and they have 10,000 of them. But name one. Oh, you can name 5 to 10 of their successions. I don't care how many times I fail. I care how many times I succeed, because that one succession makes everything else worth it.
I do. I love what you said too about there was a time when you did comedy that when a joke failed, it broke you. And and I think that speaks a lot to the evolution of the individual as an artist, yourself, and the rest of us as artists, as creative people. That there's almost a time, at least in my journey, there's a time when I was asking for acceptance. And I think what happened for me when I got sober is as I got stronger in myself, as I began to understand that I was capable of and worth being in spite of what you thought of me. And a lot of that for me was spiritual growth. What happened was I began to be willing to be wrong, be willing to grow, and be willing to do things like you said for the sake of doing them, right?
Yeah.
Because I began to value the moments between the applause
Yeah.
more than the
Yeah.
applause. And I used to live
Exactly.
to draw applause. And now
Mhm.
I don't even want it because I really don't.
Yeah.
I can't say that. That's a lie. Let me be clear. We all love applause. We love pats on the back. We love being seen
But we
and
don't need it as
acknowledged.
much.
But I don't
Yeah.
need it. There was a time when I
Mhm.
needed it, and I don't need it
Mhm.
today. And frankly, sometimes when I do start to do something, it is the feedback that I least want.
Mhm.
I'm driven by my own desire to express myself rather than my hope that what I express will be pleasing to you, right?
Exactly. And
Um,
that's exactly how I felt. It's when you're on stage, I needed those 500 people to tell me I was good. And like you said, when we went through these spiritual journeys, I'm very spiritual as well. I don't need the 500 people because I know who I am and I know what I am inside. And you feel more comfortable. I don't need them to tell me I'm good. I already know it, but it doesn't hurt.
yeah. What does your inner voice tell you? What is your spiritual? I mean, you don't have to go into great detail, but I mean, what does that mean that you are very spiritual too? What does that mean for you? What is
I'm not
spiritual to
very
you?
re- I'm not very religious, but I to me the spiritual part that I follow is more like human emotion. Um and feeling, almost like auras about people. Um, I'm very spiritual in the, not going into the creation part of it, but I'm very spiritual in we're all made of the same composites, we're all stardust and we're all, iron, this and that. So I look at it as we are so lucky. And you don't look at it when you're drinking because you're just so inebriated and everything, BS, just crap. And you don't look around. You look up at the moon, but you don't look at the moon. You look up at the stars, but you don't look at the stars. And you sit and look up sometimes and you go, oh my God, table 33 forgot ranch. But then you look up at the stars and you start to think, I'm a 5'8" person who's small compared to a 6'5" person. But now let's look at a building. Now let's look at the planet. Now let's look at everything. We're inside of a galaxy, inside of a million other galaxies. Who knows what's going on out there? I try not to take anything too serious. I try not to live, I don't want to say by rules. I follow laws and this and that. But like I said earlier, I like breaking the molds where, oh, this is the way it always worked. Well, I don't care if that's the way it always worked. Why don't we try something new? I think my biggest, like my Jiminy Cricket inside me, and I've been asking myself this. It's funny you brought this up, but I've been asking myself, like, what gets me going? Like, what is my inside my head? And I think the biggest thing is I just try to be me. And I know it sounds so cliche, but I've met thousands of people, and I've met some people like me, but nobody like me. Nobody can do me better than me, just like nobody can do you better than you. And there's people like us out there, but there's only one Mike Van Vliet, and I want to be him the best way that I can. And the voice inside of me that I follow, it just says, go with your heart. Go with, as long as it's safe and not illegal, try it. I'm going to go home and try some paintings later and some new ideas. And the only thing, there's nothing stopping me. And it's like, why not? I think that's one of my biggest, like, why not? Why don't you do this? Well, why don't we do this? What do we have to lose? I'm big on just, I try to live life, and see something, enjoy it, kind of see something, go for it. Um, just appreciate the moment and appreciate what we're doing and just try to make the best of it. I know that's tough, but I don't really, there isn't something inside of me like an investor where he wakes up every day and says, I've got to go play with numbers and I've got to go look at portfolios. When I wake up every day, I just look and go, how can I make my life and maybe the world a little bit more beautiful, whether it be through art or laughter or a poem or just cracking a joke in line at Walmart today. what can I do to make my life and people's life around me a little bit better and have fun while we're doing it.
I appreciate that, man. I really do, and I think I feel like the more conscious we become, the more we begin to socialize ourselves to embrace our consciousness and stop
Mhm.
um, diluting it. Right? Something in the way that we've been socialized has encouraged us away from our heart, encouraged us away from our feelings, encouraged us away from being unique and instead towards conformity, right? Certain size, certain look, certain clothing, certain jobs, certain expectations, certain education, certain things depict success, other things depict failure or laziness, and
Yep.
all of this. And I love what you talk about when you say that when you were drinking, you would look at the moon, but you weren't looking at the moon. You would look at the stars, but you weren't looking at the stars. And just, I think for me too, very similar to what you said spiritually, what that means to me is kind of understanding my place in this existence differently than I allowed myself to before. Understand that I'm small, important,
Yeah.
valuable,
Yeah.
unique, the only one of me that will ever truly be. Therefore, I have a responsibility, right, to
Hmm.
become me. But it's not the same kind of pressure, right?
Hmm.
That said, what would you say you need to continue to work on? Is there something that you still struggle with as a man?
Oh, absolutely. This could take hours. I think one of my biggest is procrastination. I have carpe diem tattooed on my leg because there is no tomorrow, and you have to seize the opportunities. But I get very hypocritical sometimes, and well, I just want to take a break, or I just want to take today off, or I'll get this done later, and you just have to. There is no tomorrow. Like when you were looking at when I looked at the moon drinking, it was just a moon. And your view of life, I don't want to say I want to say my view of life when I was drinking was almost like the world owed me something. I'm working hard. I'm doing this. Where are my rewards? And you get sober and you stop looking at it that way and you start looking at it like, wow, I'm really lucky to be able to do what I'm doing today. I'm really lucky that I can look up at the moon, and now I'm looking at the craters, and now I'm thinking that is so far away yet looks so big. And then you put your life in perspective and you realize what is and isn't important, and you're able to consciously break down. And I think for me, the procrastination is one of them. I think I definitely need to work on communicating. I think we all say that we're better at communicating than we are, but I think we always hold something back. Um, and I really think. I mean, 10 years ago, I would have said I need to quit drinking. I need to take care of that. But I think now there's not one big issue. I think there's just some small ones. I need to be more diligent about updating my art site, or I need to be better about the way I save money. It's little things.
I appreciate that because I think one of the things that is a misunderstanding, and maybe not for everybody, but for a lot of folks, particularly family of or loved ones who are experiencing an addict or an alcoholic in their lives, and maybe the addict or alcoholic themselves, that if I just quit, everything will be fine. Right. But the
Yeah.
reality is life still continues to happen. And what I've done is I've learned that I have a lot of work to do now that I've put down my substances. Right. Um,
Mhm.
I still deal with fear of what people think of me. I still deal with shame about things that I have done, or I guess guilt is things that I've done. Shame is feeling bad about who I am, right? I still
Yeah,
deal with some of this stuff, and it doesn't go
I do too.
away, but I deal with it differently, right? I deal with
Mhm.
it differently, and I can move through it um, without drinking or pushing it down with some kind of chemical. And that's the
Or
miracle,
even
right?
beating
That's the
yourself up
miracle.
too bad about it. Yeah,
What's that?
or even beating yourself up too bad about it just mentally, you know?
And a big piece of being able to not beat yourself up to the point of needing a drink is understanding that I am a piece of this huge universe. And
Mhm.
people before me have felt bad about themselves and they had to keep
Uh-huh.
moving, right? And
Yep.
so getting some perspective. What are you grateful for? Three things.
Oh, I'm grateful for my family. Uh, I'm grateful, and I know this is going to sound selfish, but I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm grateful that I've been given problems. I'm an alcoholic. I've got a bone disease. I'm short. I'm skinny. But I'm grateful that I'm here. You know, there's a 1 in 400 trillion chance that me is sitting right here. I think that's pretty fantastic. Um, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for life itself. I almost said me, but I'm grateful for just the opportunity to live, um, and live now. You know, and number three, what am I grateful for? My sobriety as a whole, and that comes down to a little bit of me, a lot of my friends and family, and some luck. But I didn't do it alone. I had a great support group. I mean, I'm most grateful really just for my life and those around me. You know, on a small scale, on a grand scale. Oh, I love technology and I love cars, but when I wake up every day, what am I really super pumped to be happy about? The fact that I woke up 10 years ago, I woke up and I go, I'm in a bad mood. And people go, why? I go, because I woke up. That's a really crappy way to look at life. Now I wake up, and I woke up today to a broken phone. Okay. I woke up and I went, well, I'll fix it. We'll figure it out. But the sun's shining. I'm alive. I have hours before I go to work. I'm going to talk to a friend. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be alive. I'm grateful for my friends and family around me. Um, I'm really just grateful just in general. You know, I used to be so angry and cynical in the past. And I'm grateful for not being that way anymore. I'm happy. I live in a small little garage apartment. I mean, barely have any heat. I roll out of my bed, I go into my kitchen. And like we said earlier, you know, based on society, that's your failing, Mike. You're 36, you're single, and you live in a garage. Oh no! I'm happy I live in that garage. I'm really happy because it's mine. I pay for it. I work for it. Yeah, the electric may not be the greatest in but I pay for that electric. You know, it's mine. I'm grateful for my life and the opportunities.
Yeah, self supporting. It's a big piece,
Uh-huh.
right? It's a big piece to be able to support myself. Um,
Yeah.
what is one thing that you haven't covered here that most concerns you in this world that you have to move yourself through on a daily basis?
Um, you know, I don't want to. I mean, I think we talked a lot about me, but I think I'd talk about the hardest thing to get through today. You know, I wake up grateful, happy to be alive, and then you turn the news on or you open the paper, and you know, without getting into political stuff, there's too much hate. There's too much hate in the world now. There's too much anger. Um, you know, there's too much prejudice and racism and bigotry and sexism, but I think all of that really derives from, you know, misunderstanding and hate and anger inside of ourselves. So we project it on other people. But I think that's the toughest thing for any of us right now dealing with is how we manage our anger or our hate or our depression. Um, I'm so tired and sadly not, but of watching my heroes like a Mitch Hedberg or a Chris Cornell or a Robin Williams. Oh my God, I almost started crying. Take their lives. I hate seeing these school shooters and people not be able to deal with life right now. And it's what I want people to understand. And I think this goes kind of about me, but about life is whatever you're going through, somebody has gone through it. Um, I went through hell, you went through hell, and there's other people out there that are going through similar types of hell and different ones. But we got through it. And you and I did it without taking our own lives or taking somebody else's or fighting people or getting online and getting super angry. We constructively found a way to get our anger out, get our hate out. I mean, because we have anger and we hate. I mean, we're nice people, but there's hatred inside of us. And where somebody will wake up in the morning and watch the news and see something they don't like and go react in a negative way, where they're blowing something up or shooting somebody or fighting somebody. I like to look at it and go, well, how can I make it a little bit better through Mike Van Vliet's point of view or my perspective? I can't, I'm not going to run for Congress, so I can't change it that way. But what can I do as an artist, as a human being? Well, I can make a joke about it. I can paint about it. I can express. I can start conversations. You can try to change people. You can't really change people's point of views, but you can make them think a different way. So I just try to ask questions. But I've been through hell. It sucks. And I've wanted to quit. I've had those suicidal thoughts. But the important thing is to just keep going, you know?
Do you deal with depression?
Yes, every day. Every day. I'm on anti-anxiety, antidepressant pills. I got to a point last year where I went to a doctor. I stood at my job and I dropped frozen French fries on the ground in front of the fryer and almost started to cry. And I said, that's when I knew, because you think it's me, but that's when I knew this is mental. There's something wrong.
Bigger than me.
I just wanted to start crying because I dropped 10 cents worth of potatoes on the ground. And I went and talked to him and I got on these pills. But what they tell you when I went to my therapist was, and I didn't realize this, I was in such a routine from drinking that every day was the same. There was no surprise. There was nothing different. And I started taking a different route to work. And that started to change. So I'd wake up and do something different every day, or I have to try to stay moving. I still deal with the depression, but when you can feel it coming on and you kind of go, well, I got a depression coming on. I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, I'm depressed. I'm going to sit and not shower and sit on the couch. You sit there and go, okay, I got a depression coming on. Let's just put it in double gear as far as writing and laughing. I make CDs of happy music, Michael Jackson and upbeat things that I know when I put it on at work, it's not going to make me want to crash my car into a tree. I'm going to be singing Dirty Diana or something. It's going to make me happy. So it's like the alcoholism. It's a daily struggle. Some days are worse than the others, but you have to realize, look, like you said, they've done this for hundreds of years. They've gotten through it without a drink. I can do it. I've gotten through 7.5 years of having a bad day without a drink. I can do it today. I've been through 30 years of anger and hatred in the news. We can get through it today. We just have to, you just have to understand that there is a light at the end of the tunnel,
I appreciate you speaking so openly about that. I also deal with depression, and it was I had a million reasons not to take medication. And a lot of them were, the man and conspiracy and,
Yep.
falling in line, and I'm on a farm, and just, all of these just like crazy ideas. And,
Yeah.
the reality is I had to come to terms with the fact that I have a better quality of life.
Mhm.
And so I also take medication and have since just before I got sober. I've tried to get off of them several times, and it just wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
And I have to kind of surrender to that. My experience has been that I think my drinking was an effort to medicate.
Mhm.
It was an effort to feel differently, to change the way that I was feeling. And for me, as an alcoholic, but also as a person with clinical depression, alcohol acts differently in my body. And so part of what it did is it boosted my mood in the beginning. And so understanding that self medication is just that, and then learning that in order to stop self medicating, I might need a little bit of help.
Yeah.
And somebody explained it to me as like somebody who's diabetic taking their insulin.
Yep. Me too.
And that was helpful to me. And the bottom line is, I don't want to debate anymore. I don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah.
How can I be most grateful to wake up. And it's not to say that I don't have dips and depression still, because I do. And that's one of the ways that I know that it puts me back to a normal baseline, instead of elevating me into a happy mania or an
Yeah.
unreasonable um, place. I still go up and down,
Yeah.
but I have the capacity to put on a CD of happy music
Yep.
today,
Yep.
instead of just diving in, right?
Yeah.
So depression is real, and I lost a friend recently to suicide, who dealt with depression, and your best friend, you said that you lost. I don't know what the details of that were, but
He
how did
died.
you move through that?
He
And what was
died.
that?
He died of cancer.
Mm,
He had melanoma, and it snuck up on him within a year. Took him out, and he was a comedian as well. And we all dealt with it the way he wanted to. True comedian spirit. I'm going to laugh my way through it. And we made videos where we try to have an intervention, like Sean, you need to stop having this cancer. And we joked about it. And when he died, I remember getting phone calls from everybody, and I stayed so immersed in. I was one of his best friends, so I kind of took charge, not charge, but I was one of the guys that the comedians and the friends. This is what we need. This is where we need to go. So I stayed busy in the planning and everything, and I honestly didn't think about having a drink until about 3 days later, and I didn't even think I want to drink. I thought to myself, in the past 3 days, I haven't thought about drinking. And I said, well, that's a great sign that I'm going through the death of my best friend and I don't even want to drink, because I know he'd come back from wherever he's at and smack me in the face.
right.
Um, but it was tough. You know what I did was I think what helped was I wrote a lot. I cried. Crying is something, we talk about as men, you're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to show emotion. I sat and cried in front of friends and I let it out. I wrote, serious. I let my feelings out, and then I wrote comedy. But I dealt with it by just staying busy and realizing if I turn back to the bottle, I'm he's still going to be dead. I'm still going to be upset. And the only thing that's changed is now I'm out $25 for a bottle of liquor, and I've got to start my 2 or 3 years sober over, and I've got to apologize, and I don't want to do that. For what? For what? One bad night, it's 5 hours. Can you get through 5 hours? Can you get through one? And you just, whenever, we still have the good and the bad days. When I have those bad days with my depression, I go, look, don't think about 10 hours from now. Think about what can I do in the next 5 minutes? I'm going to listen to a song and the next thing you know, it's 2 hours later. So I just kept the next moment busy. I talked to friends. I went to comedy shows. I even just took a drive and appreciated just the road, scenes, or, roads that we used to drive over together, little things. But instead of almost getting mad at the world and mad at God and you took my best friend, I sat there and I laughed and went, oh my God, we had so much fun. That time that he left me downtown to go have sex with his wife and blah, blah, blah. Like, I enjoyed those moments. And I said, you know what? I'm upset that he's gone. But boy, am I fortunate that I got to meet him and spend this time with him. God, I miss him. And my life sucks right now without him. But would I give up the 5 years of friendship if I didn't? I'd rather have him as a friend and deal. It's that Mitch Hedberg joke. I'm not going to stop eating an apple just because it's going to become a core. I'm going to enjoy it, and then I'm not going to focus on the core. So I didn't delve too much into the sadness and the depression of I'm without my best friend. I looked at where would I have been without my best friend the past couple of years? Oh my God, thank you so much for being here. Even if it was only a couple of years, Sean, I love you. Thank you. And I'm going to take our experiences and move on. And I think about him every day, and it pushes me a little bit. Like if I don't want to write, I go, I have the opportunity to write. Sean doesn't. I'm going to go write, and it just makes you feel more appreciative of what you do have instead of what you don't. You look at the silver linings more.
Appreciate that, man. And what a way to honor your friend Sean.
Yeah.
For real. Who's your hero in comedy?
My hero in comedy. It's almost like the Bill Burr joke. Like we're using hero to describe a woman wearing a bathing suit as a guy that runs into a. I think anybody that goes on stage, I have respect for, um, and I think it's a courageous act to be so vulnerable to so many strangers. But as far as I look up to comedians. I think Bill Hicks. I think if I had to pick a hero, I think Bill Hicks would probably be the closest. Mitch Hedberg's my favorite comedian. Bill Burr, Tom Segura. But I think if I had to look at somebody as like an icon in my mind, as far as comedy, it would be Bill Hicks. I've studied him a lot, watched a lot of his, and I mean, Chicago native. I see you're nodding. I mean, he's from but I think there was just something about Bill Hicks that he kind of had that perfect kind of fu to society, almost the man. I'm Bill Hicks. I'm here to do what I'm going to do, and if you don't like it, I've got something to say to you, and I've got something else to say, and he had the balls, but he had the likability balls to where when he was on stage, you were scared of him, but when he was off stage, you could go talk to him, and I always loved and respected that. So I think if I had to use the word hero, as far as a comedian, it would be Bill Hicks, just for what he was able to do in the short amount of time, how talented he was. And I mean, he died over 20 years ago, and he's still such a mainstay figure in the comedy community. So I think he was just everybody says Lenny Bruce. I think he's just so overrated, but I think Bill Hicks was just, there's something about him that I really admire.
That's awesome. You got anything else that you'd like to say or any questions you have?
No, I just hope you got what you wanted. I hope that this definitely goes out to help people. And I hope they understand that whatever good or bad is happening in the world or in their life, it's going to change. And 90% of the time, we can change it. I'll never forget, I dealt with suicidal vision, or thoughts for a while. And I read a quote and it said, "Do you want to kill yourself, or do you just want this life that you're living right now to end?" And I started thinking about that and I said, well, I don't want to die. I love being alive. I just don't like this life. Well, what don't I like about it? Start changing it. And I think we all have the power to do that. And once we appreciate the fact that we're here and we understand that life is a gift, and we stop looking at the moon and we start looking at the moon, everything will start falling into place. And I think there'll be a lot less hate and anger out there,
Absolutely, man. That's like the third time during this interview that you've reminded me. I don't know if you've ever read Stephen R. Covey's book. What is it? 8 or 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or something. He talks about the circle of influence and the circle of concern.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever heard of that?
I know, but that book is on I've got screenshots of books that I want to read, and I've got one, and that's one of them. Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be a book about business and how to succeed in business, but he's not fooling me. It's a spiritual book, bro. And he talks about it's like spiritual principles applied to life. And one of the things that he talks about is circle of concern and circle of influence. We've got this, if we were to build this huge circle and put within it all of the things that we concern ourselves with, right? The news, racism, homophobia, sexism, our past, our future, right? All of these things, we have to recognize that immediately I can't touch those things. I alone cannot immediately affect those things, but I could live my life in a way that supports or does not support them. For instance, if I were to push all of those things out towards the edges of the circle and put another circle that is my circle of influence, I could take something like global warming, and while I can't go out and fix it, I can choose to watch my electricity, or I could choose to recycle. Racism, I can't go out and eradicate racism on the face of the planet, but I can actively smile at somebody who doesn't look like me in my life, right? And just building a life based on my circle of influence, and also recognizing that I become more of that which I produce. Sort of like the two wolves story, if you've ever heard that.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's just this has been really inspiring, man. And I loved you back in the day, and turns out I still love you today.
Oh, I love you. I still love you. I missed you. I'm glad we got to do this.
Me too. And what I'd like to do is post this on my site, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna. I don't know if I'll edit it. I might edit it down a little bit because we've gone over an hour.
Okay.
But I'm gonna put some information about your paintings on there. And you've never been formally trained, huh?
No, I learned everything on YouTube. Just trial and error and just practice. That's why I don't mind failure. I'll just reuse the canvas,
Right
and
on.
just, if you want to learn something or if you want something bad enough, you'll figure it out. And YouTube is a great tool. I love Jean-Michel Basquiat. I love his paintings, but I mean, I just went to YouTube and just,
Yeah.
my my Google is probably all how to fill in the blank. That's how I learn everything. We have this tremendous, I mean, we've got technology right here. I don't know how to do this. Well, I'm going to figure it out. And that's how I
Well,
taught myself to paint.
having studied art myself in college, I have to say that your understanding of space, your understanding of just the construction of a space, your work with color, a lot of your stuff. I'm going to pull one up here so folks can see this one in particular. This one's called Boogeyman,
Yeah.
I think. And what I like about it, and what I wanted to kind of mention to you about it was, let me pull this up. Hold on one second. Okay, so this right here,
Yeah.
it looks it looks randomy. Like somebody grabbed the canvas and they threw a bunch of stuff on there, and you even said in jest while we were talking earlier that somebody said, "Hey, your nephew's, your 4-year-old nephew's paintings are great." There's some inherent understanding to be able to take a cluster of colors and make them work, particularly in all of these palette motions and like random motions and then sprinkles. Like there's something to, like Picasso's cubism,
Yeah.
his crazy stuff. Like that brother could really, really illustrate reality. He could really draw people well, right? So I just wanted to kind of say that I love that about your work. And I have a friend, Liz, who I hope to interview also, that does similar work, in that the understanding of color and its influence, like even when you're dealing with, uh, you can create what we call visual vibration
Mhm.
with color. And I wonder if you, here's another one that just, it doesn't make any sense why it works.
I love the color and I love the placement. Where can you have more? Where can you have less? What colors look good together and over each other? And a piece. I love a dark skull painting as much as the next guy, but I also love just a bright piece like this, and it can brighten up a room. I've seen what it's done to my bedroom, and I usually have grays in my room, but I put a bright piece in there and it makes me feel good and it just looks good.
Yeah. I love this one too. I love the energy. Now you're not dealing just with
Yes.
color, but you're dealing with energy.
Yeah,
And
I
there's
love
something
that
to be
one.
said about that, man. There's something to be said about the skill that it can take to do that well. I think you do it really well.
Thank you.
I'm loving watching you develop as an artist.
Absolutely.
I just appreciate you so much, and I'm proud of you, and I'm glad that you're still around, man. I'm glad that we both made it this far, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I knew we would, but for us to still be in touch and friends and stuff. I mean, it's been almost 20 years, and I'm grateful for that as well. It's been great. I mean, and I thank you for, just always being a friend. And I mean, when I first got sober, you put your hand out. And I've always been grateful for that. And your brother Matt has always been great to me. So I mean, you guys have a place in my heart forever. So anything you ever need, you let me know.
Right on, brother. Thank you so much, Mike.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, bro. We'll talk again.
Absolutely. Love you.
All right. Bye. Love you too.
All right.